The three main reasons why I believe that Clemson will be a national title contender in 2018.
The talent factor.
Now, the scary thing for anybody who's not a Clemson fan is that this might be the most, from top to bottom, talented team that Clemson's, well, maybe ever had. If you just look at talent alone, it's an extremely veteran team for the most part. We have, of course, a great recruiting class and lots of great young players coming in, but this team is loaded with veterans. The only position that I would say is a question mark at this point, well, there might be two positions. A cornerback position, which was one of our weaknesses last year, but I think is going to be a lot better this year due to experience alone. And of course, the quarterback position. Now, we have three more than capable, really good quarterbacks that can start at most colleges in the country. The question is, who's it going to be? Lots of opinions on that. Either way, I'm going to trust the coaching staff, clearly, to make that determination. My personal belief is that Kelly Bryant will start the season, and the changing of the guard will happen at some point, whether that's 2 or 3 games in or 5 or 6 games in, or even towards the end of the season. I think that Trevor Lawrence will become the starter eventually to end the season. So, we'll see what happens. If Kelly Bryant's winning all of his games, then it's going to be hard to make that transition. But if Kelly Bryant struggles and they're still winning, Trevor Lawrence is going to play some, regardless. So if he's outperforming Kelly Bryant, then he will take that starting position over. They're not going to redshirt Lawrence. He's going to play too much, in my opinion, to redshirt him. So I think that just based on talent alone, they've made, both Tony Elliott and Dabo Swinney have said that he's the closest thing to Deshaun Watson that they've seen there. And that's a big, big praise. And I think that gives you a little bit of insight into the fact that he is just that good. So we'll see what happens with that. The defensive line is going to be the best defensive line in the country. Of course, there are teams out there, Alabama and Georgia, who are going to have really good defensive lines also. But Clemson's defensive line was top 3 in the country last year, and they're all coming back. So it's going to be a basically NFL talent-loaded defensive line. They're always loaded at receiver. The running back position might be the best running back core that we've had in a while. Of course, led by Adam Choice, Tavion Feaster, and Travis Etienne, a 3-headed monster. And from what they're saying from spring practice alone in the scrimmages is that Adam Choice is really coming into his own. And that's scary because based on talent, I would put Feaster and Etienne ahead of him. But he's a veteran, the most veteran of all of them. And he's a very capable back. Now, he's more of a short down, third down yardage back. But he's capable of making the big play. And, of course, Feaster and Etienne are home run hitters all the way. So the running back position might be the best we've ever had as a group, not one single guy. The defense overall, especially the front 7, might be the overall most talented, most veteran group that Venables and Dabo have had since they've been there. And, of course, we have a bunch of great quarterbacks. So with the exception of the unknown at cornerback, defensive back position, this team is prime to make a run. Now, the expectations I had for this team last year, they exceeded them. Coming off the national championship, losing Deshaun Watson, losing a bunch of great players, it was, quote unquote, a rebuild year for Clemson, and they made it to the college football playoff. Now, granted, they got their butt whooped by Alabama in the playoffs, but I didn't even expect them to get there. Now, this year, my expectation is for them to get to the playoff. My optimism, if you look at their schedule, they really should go 12-0 in the regular season. Now, it's hard to do that. Okay, listen, they lost to Syracuse last year and the Pitt the year before that. So slipping up one game, no matter which team you are, is more likely than not. And so, listen, I'm not saying they're going to go 12-0, but looking at their schedule, everybody on that schedule they should beat. So I expect them to get to the playoff. And if they get in the playoff, of course, I expect them to be competitive, much more competitive than they were against Alabama
The
last year.
coaching factor.
The coaching. The coaching we all know is good at Clemson. Dabo Swinney, Brent Venables, Tony Elliott, a great trio of head coach, defensive coordinator, and offensive coordinator. As good of a trio as you're going to see in college football. The thing about the coaching at Clemson is not only the recruiting, it's the development of the players, first of all, and the continuity. This isn't something you see a lot. So there's a lot of rumors that Venables was, he's getting offers. He actually did interviews to be a head coach. And I think the same will happen with Tony Elliott at some point. I mean, his resume is uncanny for a guy who didn't have much of a history as an offensive coordinator before he took over that job from Chad Morris when Chad Morris left. But the coaching, the continuity of them being there together, the same unit, and having the same mindset and all being on the same page and recruiting, and the list goes on and on. The coaching is a huge factor in all of sports, particularly in college sports. Now, you can argue in certain sports like Major League Baseball and even the NBA that when you have great talent, the coaching only goes so far. College football coaching is extremely important, which is why you see a handful of elite coaches, 2 or 3 or 4 maybe at the most in the whole country, and then there's a huge drop-off after that. Finding an elite coach and an elite coaching staff is a paramount to winning the lottery. So the coaching staff is another reason why I think the coaching staff staying intact, I guess I should say, from last year to this year, is another reason I think that Clemson will be a college football playoff team and most likely a team that makes it at least into the national championship game.
The revenge factor.
Revenge. You cannot underestimate the power of revenge in sports. Just ask Clemson after they lost to Alabama in the national title game the first time how much that motivated them to win that next year. Ask Alabama after they lost to Clemson in that second national championship game how much that motivated them to go out there and put a whooping on Clemson last year. Revenge is a funny thing. It's an intangible thing. It's something you can't see, you can't predict, you can't really put it into words. It's a motivational force, both for the coaches and the players, that it's an extremely effective tool, bulletin board material, whatever you want to call it. When Clemson lines up to do drills all spring and fall before the season starts, the players that were there last year will have in the back of their mind, walking off that field last year after getting embarrassed by the Crimson Tide. And they will work that much harder. When they step on the field next year to play their first opponent and their second opponent and their third opponent, they will have that game last year when they got embarrassed by the Crimson Tide in the back of their mind. And when they eventually, and if, which I believe they will, meet the Crimson Tide again in the postseason, that motivation that they have been living with all year long will be in the back of their mind. There's something to be said for losing in an important game, especially a playoff game or a national championship game, that goes a long way that next year, that makes you push harder than you ever believed you could push before to reach your goal. So I believe revenge will be a huge factor in the total outcome of Clemson's season this year. So when you couple all these things together, talent, coaching, revenge, I believe that Clemson is poised to make a run at least to the national championship game this year. And of course, any team that gets to the national championship game can win it. So that's my thoughts. I, this might be the most excited, with the exception of 2 years ago, coming off of the loss in the first national title game. I was excited because Deshaun Watson was coming back, and all the great talent was coming back, and of course the revenge factor and all of that. I was really looking forward to that season. That might have been the most excited I've been about a Clemson football team in my life. And this year coming up is pretty much equivalent to that. Now, we don't have Watson, but we have Trevor Lawrence, Kelly Bryant, and Hunter Johnson, and the rest of the team is off the charts. And we have that sour taste in our mouth, both as a team and as a fan base from that playoff game last year. So I'm so excited for this next season. Anything can happen, right? I mean, we could go 12-0 and then lose the ACC championship game. I mean, things happen, and it would be a disappointment. But as far as going into the season, I have never, as a Clemson fan, been more optimistic than I am coming up into this next year about what they are capable of doing. So, give me your thoughts on this. Go Tigers, go ACC, Pigskin Pete, checking out.